Hello everyone, and thanks for coming back to the channel. I want to preface this video with it'll sound like this is self-serving, and that is not my point at all. I think it's very important in this particular video to share it as much as you can. I'm seeing a lot of information being shared in the 2S Power Group and probably other social media platforms that is coming from people who don't have a Mobula 7. And that alone probably sounds self-serving, but what I'm concerned about is people are saying, oh yeah, just do this. And mainly what I'm seeing is a lot of people talking about swapping out the frames. If you see conversations like that, please reference this video. Please link it to them and say, hey, you need to watch this video. Some things are explained. And I'm not claiming that anyone who's out there in the discussion has actually got any malice intent or anything of that nature. I think it's a shortcoming of the typed text. That sometimes when we type a message in 15, 20 words, what have you, it can come across as someone with experience and knowledge, and they're just sharing it other than speculation or a suggestion or maybe an option, and we just don't have enough details. So if someone wants to seek advice about the Mobula 7, there's only a few sources I know of. Skadoosh, who has been by the channel here, he has his own channel as well. I'll link that down below. He actually works in China, and he's got a Mobula 7 and has flown it. I think he also has one of the beta FPV 2S brushless whoops, I think maybe the 75. So he has some experience. Dave Tang on Facebook, I'm not sure if he has a channel or not, but he also has a Mobula 7. Kato Yuan, I think is how you pronounce his name. He has a small web shop in China, but I don't have any contact with him. I've sent him a message on more than one occasion, but haven't received any responses. There may be a communication barrier there as well. And I think the last flight of his Mobula 7, I think, went into a river or something of that nature. But it's another source where you can try. I think a few of you may be seeing some shipping notifications. If you've ordered from Banggood or other sources, you need to follow that closely to see if they're actually moving. I know that can be difficult because sometimes it'll take like 2 or 3 weeks before our shipping or tracking changes a little bit. But seek sources from individuals who have it. That is the best source of information. And my concern is that whoops, this style of machine is something that a lot of people who enter the hobby are looking at it because it's safe, it's relatively inexpensive, you can fly it in small spaces so you can fly more often. So they tend to try to get started in the hobby, and if they're getting information that is not necessarily inaccurate, it may not be complete, then they could get turned off. And that's my concern, and that's why I'm encouraging you to share this video, to share the fact that there's only a few people that I previously mentioned that have this, that they need to seek the information from people who actually have had hands-on, because I'm seeing one major point reiterated, and I think there's a big disclosure that needs to happen with it. Yes, this frame does break. I think for a lot of people who aren't flying very fast, or if you're flying around more furniture than I've currently got in my house, or if you're flying outside over grass or dirt, it'll probably be fine. So, my flight style kind of dictates hard impacts. Yours may not. So that's one thing to be sure of. 2, you can repair these frames quite easily. And that's where I advocate the most, is that these components are made to marry up to this frame. It's a BWOOP 75 frame. And you can repair it. As you see here, I've got repair jobs on this frame very easily using some welder right here. You can get this from Amazon. You can probably get this from your local hobby shop. It's not very expensive. I think it's like $7 or $8 for 2 tubes of this stuff, and it lasts a really long time. You just tape one side, you smear it on, you wait for it to start to set up. You take your tape off, marry it up on the other side. So if you have 2 frames and one breaks during flight, and I saw Dave was flying one with, he had the strut broken on his, and you could see the whoop in the video kind of wiggling up and down. It was still flying fine. So I think one thing is we shouldn't be so afraid of the breakages. I think that's a little bit of a point that's become a talking point. It's coming up over and over and over again. And I think if you're looking for something that's indestructible, this hobby is going to be very difficult for you, because that's what we do. We break stuff. We're flying around these little tiny electronic components, and they have these little tiny solder points, and we're crashing them into immovable objects. So things are going to break. So if you're looking for a frame that might be more durable, much of the discussion has come around this beta FPV frame, which you can see it has double up the struts. It has a little bit different components. Now, 1, I haven't flown it, so I don't know that it's going to fly the same. So that's the first thing you need to know about it. 2, I think it's going to be very, very difficult, and you need to make a point to making sure that people who don't know, it's going to require some modifications in order to get these components, mainly the canopy, mounted on this thing to where it sits flat. Because as you can see where I've taken off that grommet disappears. And as you can see from the canopy here, the struts, they're nice and proud. And I don't know if you can see it very well. I haven't got great lighting here, but that strut comes all the way out above the grommet, and then it marries up to the flat side of the mounting point of the canopy. So if you're going to use this canopy on this thing, it's going to be sitting right down. Look how close that is. I don't know if that's coming through in camera very well. Look how close that is to the top of the board. So even if you get that down, that's going to mean your camera angle. See how this component down here is sticking down a good few millimeters? See that right there? The back end of the camera, the VTX portion of the camera, that's probably going to touch the board, and then you can plug it in and probably get magic smoke. I'm not saying you can't use this frame or others like it in order to mount this and get a more durable frame. What I'm saying is you need to be prepared for the fact that it might not work, or it's going to require you to make some sort of modification. And I've thought on this, but I haven't come up with anything to where we can extend this little mount point up several millimeters in order to make it more like the Mobula 7 frame. See how proud those are sticking straight up off of there? When we do that same thing with this, that struts below that prop guard line. And again, unless you're getting like, even then, see the camera just sticks out below. The camera itself, I know this isn't coming through great, the camera just sticks out below the canopy a little bit. So I encourage everybody, if you're getting a Mobula 7, which I think is a great product, despite the fact that the frame does break, buy a spare frame. When your frame gets all broken up to it's affecting flight performance, or you just want to repair your breakages, make sure you have some welder on hand, spare frame, swap your components over to your spare frame, repair your old, and just go back and forth. I couldn't tell you how many times I've repaired these frames now. I think I told somebody a week or so ago, or a few days ago, that I had over 100 flights with the Mobula 7. I suppose that number is probably getting close to 130 flights now, and I'm still using my two original frames. I'm still using the original canopy. I'm still using the original props, original motors, original flight controller. The only thing I've swapped out is between the two frames. So, if you're a part of those social media platforms where you see this discussion going on, please let them know that they need to watch these videos. If you're watching this video for this information, please watch it in detail. Maybe rewatch it, because I'm just so concerned that people are going to end up making an investment in frames and hopes and dreams, and they're just going to be more difficult to make them true than it may appear otherwise. There's also been questions about the Beta 75X frame, and the struts on that are also, it's either flush with the prop guard or just a millimeter or so below it. But it doesn't matter anyways, because you're going to have to do a mod again to make the motors mount up, because the motors have a different mounting pattern. But the Beta 75 Pro frame and the OG, which is I think what I've got here, because the new one has little bump outs on the top of the hoops. This is the one I've seen discussing a lot. Also, a little added note, if you have a Beta 75, or if you have a frame like this and you want to mount a 2S battery, these are made for the Hobby King Nanotech 300 milliamp, and they just slide in here. Well, they kind of slide. You have to kind of finesse them in there because there's a couple of catch points. Robert Thompson, again, he designed these. He's quite a designer. He gets these things done pretty quickly now that he's got good measurements and stuff. I had this in there previously, but so if you are transferring your guts over to something like this with a single bar across the bottom for your battery, you could use one of these mounts. There's two versions. The ones with the hole in it is the light version, and I'll link those down below. And tip your designers. He's also got a canopy that he's designed for the Beta FPV products, and you can look at that. He's also put a hole here in the back of it. He does encourage you to print this with support, otherwise it turns out a little bit wonky, I do believe. And this is obviously made for the Caddx EOS, which it brings your camera forward and down just a touch. So please help people be aware that I'm not saying you can't swap over to this Beta FPV frame. What I'm saying is it doesn't natively swap. You're not just going to be able to unscrew from here and put it on there. You're going to have to do some sort of modding. I was actually in bed when I started doing some nighttime bed scrolling before I started seeing a lot of this information going around, and I just thought, oh man, we've got to get this covered. So I don't want new entrants or people who are unaware that buying another frame that's not the BWOOP 75 frame, these components won't natively swap to it. There could be another frame out there, but the one I'm seeing discussed a lot are the Beta FPV frames, specifically the Beta 75 Pro. This frame here. Okay, if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in that section down below. I appreciate your time. Share the video, and thanks for watching.